Hello everyone and welcome back to Rebooted MCU. Today we are here with Rebooted MCU Phase 7 Part 3, which covers Armor Wars. So in case you did not see my community post, I'm going back to making each Rebooted MCU episode its own standalone release. So that means one project per episode like I used to do, but it's still going to be in the condensed recap format. And if you've missed the reason why there hasn't been many Rebooted MCU uploads recently, it's because I've started my career and things are a lot to adjust to. I'm just going to leave it at that. And because of that, I'm sort of having to relearn the process of how much time I'm going to have to make videos, what editing is going to look like, what my day-to-day operations are going to look like. And because of that, I'm still going to upload videos, obviously. I'm committed to this series, and I'm committed to seeing this Dragon Ball analysis, One Piece analysis through to the very end, but the release windows might look a bit different from time to time. But I think going back to a single upload per episode is going to make everything a heck of a lot easier. So with that said, we have Armor Wars releasing today, and we have Hercules releasing next Saturday. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into Armor Wars. The fifth project in Phase 7 is Armor Wars, and it takes place in Universe 2032. The project opens up with the Daily Bugle logo, as we are greeted with the familiar face of Billy Walters, played by Adam Colborn, who is filling in for J. Jonah Jameson as the host of the Midnight News recap. Walters then discusses the massive deal reached in court today between the estate of Tony Stark and the United States government over the use of the Iron Legion. We cut to see some familiar faces sitting in a courtroom. On one side of the room we see former United States Vice President and Avenger James Rhodes, played by Don Cheadle, Stark Industries CEO Pepper Potts, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, and Chief of Stark Industries Security Happy Hogan, played by Jon Favreau. And on the other side, we see United States Army General Nelson, played by Sean Kanan, and United States Vice President Sharon Carter, played by Emily Van Camp. Stark Industries Attorney Foggy Nelson, played by Eldon Henson, argues that the original agreement for the United States government to have use of the Armor Legion was breached multiple times, specifically using the drones as weapons instead of for their intended purpose, to be peacekeeping units operational in only extreme circumstances. Walters reports that the judge found in favor of Stark Industries, meaning that ownership of the Iron Legion and the future use of their units is now in the hands of Pepper Potts. We then cut to see a man standing in a dark room watching the news report, as we see a young man enter the room. The young man asks if this is a location of Mr. Sandhurst. The man chuckles and says that the young man must be the punk known as the Deadly Hand. The young man stands tall as the man beckons for the younger man to come forward, saying that they both want the same thing: to destroy everything Tony Stark created. As the young man walks into the light of the room, he is revealed to be the child of Zhu Wenwu, the baby raised to hate and destroy Tony Stark, Shang-Chi, played by Dallas Liu. The scene abruptly cuts inside an MIT classroom as we see a girl being woken up by her professor. The girl is revealed to be Riri Williams, played by Dominique Thorne, who is scolded by Dr. Amara Pereira, played by Jacqueline Fernandez, for once again falling asleep during her biophysics lecture. As class is dismissed, we see Riri talking with her classmate and close friend Xavier King, played by Jacob Gibson, who pleads with Riri to do better staying awake during class. Riri laments about how her brain can't handle hours of lectures, especially when the material is stuff Riri taught herself back when she was in the 4th grade. As Xavier encourages her to think of her inventions when she dozes off during class, we are introduced to Riri's friend group. Deja Hamilton, played by Raven Goodwin, a former high school classmate of Riri's from Chicago who often carpools with Riri when going back home. Timothy Ferris, played by Gianni DiCenzo, a fellow engineering nerd who is obsessed with making a suit that will allow someone to run at super speed. And finally, Zeke Stain, played by Alden Ehrenreich, Timothy's roommate who is very soft-spoken and often keeps to himself. As the group finds themselves in engineering class taught by Dr. Jennifer Swenson, played by Christina Chang, class is interrupted by MIT Dean Morley Irwin, played by Dom Hall Gleason, who informs the class that thanks to a generous donation by Stark Industries, all engineering students will be able to access armor formerly used within the Iron Legion, to learn how advanced technology is created and how it can be used for technological innovation. Riri, being a mega fan of Tony Stark, is immediately intrigued and lost in thought about what might be possible if she managed to get her hands on that technology. Later that day, we see Rhodes and Pepper sitting inside an office building somewhere in Washington, D.C. As the duo discusses how thankful they are that the lawsuit is over, Happy enters the room and informs them that all of the armor has been successfully dropped off at MIT, and they can officially put their concerns about Stark's weaponry being used for evil behind them. As the three celebrate, Rhodes asks Happy if he remembered to bring the CCU, otherwise known as the Central Control Unit, back with him, causing Happy to fall silent. Rhodes reveals that the CCU is the operational unit that controls the actions of the Iron Legion as a whole, and while it is unlikely the unit would be used for a nefarious purpose while at MIT, the group should return to campus and retrieve it, just to be on the safe side. Elsewhere, we cut to see Riri daydreaming about fighting alongside Iron Man in her own Iron Man armor. The daydream is cut off by King, who asks Riri for a lug wrench. We are then shown Riri's laboratory, a laboratory filled with random parts that Riri found while dumpster diving, located inside an abandoned mechanic's garage. This is also where we learn of Riri's dream, to build her own Iron Man suit and become an even better inventor and humanitarian than that of Tony Stark. Riri implores Xavier to accompany her to sneak into the laboratory where the Iron Legion armor is being housed, as Riri believes that she might be able to take some technology for use on her own Iron Man suit prototype. Xavier expresses concern with this idea, however, as both he and Riri are on thin ice with Dean Irwin, as the two have been caught stealing from the technology lab before, and another incident could lead to serious punishment. Riri reminds Xavier of his dream, to use his expertise to create an advanced AI that could be used in retirement homes around the United States in order to help the elderly, remembering his grandmother, who died after falling from her porch and being unable to easily call for assistance. He reluctantly agrees to accompany Riri, and the two start devising a plan to sneak into the laboratory that night. That evening, we watch as Riri and Xavier attempt to sneak into the laboratory housing the Iron Legion. As the two maneuver their way into the laboratory, they are shocked to see Dean Irwin unlocking the laboratory for Rhodey, Pepper, and Happy. After Xavier manages to stop Riri from fangirling out loud over seeing some of her heroes, the duo attempt to sneak to an isolated Iron Legion sentry unit, as Rhodes and his group attempt to find the CCU. After a bit of exploring the lab, Happy manages to locate the CCU, and as he attempts to pick it up, the group is startled by a large crashing sound, which turns out to be Riri and Xavier, who accidentally knocked over a sentry unit. Rhodey asks the duo who they are and what they are doing in the lab, but is quickly cut off by Riri showing him a custom-made repulsor she threw together in her lab. The unimpressed Rhodey watches as Riri shoots a weak energy blast that fizzles out, but is cut off by a massive explosion at the outside of the lab. Believing that it was her doing, Riri screams in excitement about how she was able to create an energy release that powerful, but is cut off as Rhodes screams for Happy to get Pepper and the children out of the lab. Rhodes looks towards the explosion, which has left a giant hole in the wall of the laboratory, as we see a silhouette standing in the shadows, with 10 glowing objects casting a yellowish light through the smoke. As Happy quickly pushes Pepper, Riri, and Xavier away, Riri catches a glimpse of a second person standing outside the laboratory in the spot where the explosion occurred, Zeke Stane. We then watch Rhodey suit up in his War Machine armor through the use of nanotechnology and engage in battle with Shang-Chi, who somehow managed to get his hands on the 10 Rings of Power, the ancient weapons formerly controlled by his father. As Happy manages to get Pepper and the others out of the laboratory, he realizes that in the chaos he accidentally dropped the CCU and rushes back in the laboratory to grab it. Back inside the lab, we watch as Shang-Chi overwhelms Rhodey. The power of the 10 rings is too much for Rhodey's armor to handle as Shang-Chi screams that Rhodey is something he needs. This is when Shang-Chi notices Happy, who has reacquired the CCU and goes after him as Happy races towards the exit. In spite of Rhodey attempting to intercept Shang-Chi, he launches a massive punch at Happy. A punch so powerful that it breaks Happy's back, killing him on impact. Shocked, Rhodey stands stunned, unable to move as Shang-Chi picks up the CCU and tells Rhodey that he gets to live for now, as what is coming is a spectacle that Rhodey needs to see. As Pepper stands outside the lab shouting for Rhodey, we watch as Riri turns around to see Dean Irwin and members of the MIT campus police and fire department. As Riri mutters under her breath, Irwin screams for her and Xavier to follow him to his office, while the professionals take care of the situation. We cut to a few minutes later as we see Xavier sitting outside of Irwin's office as a police officer informs Irwin and Riri that there was at least one casualty in the laboratory, but the cause of death at this time is unknown. As the officer leaves, Irwin scolds Riri for once again getting into trouble and letting her desire to create lead to destructive tendencies. As Erwin paces around the room, he tells Riri that despite her thinking that she can get away with whatever she wants because of her intelligence, she is no Tony Stark, and that her actions will have consequences, saying that he has decided to expel both her and Xavier from MIT. Riri pleads with Erwin not to expel Xavier, as he was simply following along with her plan, and he shouldn't have his dreams taken away because he was being a good friend. Erwin remarks that Xavier is in the top 10 of MIT's engineering students, and Dr. Swinson has spoken highly of his AI creation skills. Making his decision final, Erwin decides that Xavier will be let off the hook while Riri will be expelled from MIT. As Riri exits the office, Xavier hugs her and thanks her, as he was able to hear what she said through the door. As this is happening, we watch a clearly upset Rhodey approach the two, saying that he and Pepper need to talk with them immediately, as they have information that could be vital to rectify the current situation. Hearing this, Erwin peeks his head out of the office and tells Rhodes that the big ceremony honoring the donation of the Iron Legion in 2 days will not be impacted by this incident, something that Rhodes ignores as he walks away with Riri and Xavier close behind. Inside a limousine, we see Rhodey, Riri, Xavier, and a distraught Pepper sitting together as Riri geeks out about how cool it is that she is talking with both the superhero and the former vice president. This is when Rhodey explains why he and Pepper met with them, as Pepper noticed that Riri made a comment that she recognized a man who was an accomplice with the person that killed Happy. Realizing that Happy was killed, Riri profusely apologizes, but is quickly cut off by Rhodes, who tells her that he needs to know if she recognized someone so that they could rectify the situation. Riri explains that she saw Zeke with the man, but has no clue who the man with the glowing armbands was. Rhodey tells Riri that somehow, a man got a hold of the 10 Rings, an ancient artifact that grants the wielder incredible power. Rhodey had witnessed this firsthand when he, Iron Man, and Hawkeye teamed up to take down Zhu Wenwu. Pepper jumps in and asks Riri if she would be willing to approach Zeke to ask if he would be willing to give her any information about what happened. While Riri is nervous about this, Pepper tells her that one of her best friends was killed, and in order to get closure, she needs to know who needs to be held accountable. Riri turns to Xavier for reassurance, and ultimately agrees to approach Zeke, forming an alliance with Rhodey and Pepper. The scene shifts back to the dark room from the start of the project, which is revealed to be a large warehouse. Inside, the mysterious man watches old footage from the Stark Expo as Shang-Chi and Zeke arrive and deliver him the CCU. This is when the mysterious man is finally revealed. He is Basil Sandhurst, aka the Controller, played by David Oyelowo, the mastermind behind the entire operation. As it turns out, Sandhurst was present at the 2010 Stark Expo. Considered to be one of the leaders in CPU technology, Sandhurst was invited to show off his latest invention, a microchip that could single-handedly download all saved data onto a single device without alerting the device owner. However, as he prepared to make his presentation, the building he was housed in was burned to the ground during the attack led by Crimson Dynamo and the Hammer drones. The accident left Sandhurst brutally deformed, resulting in him losing business thanks to the lengthy recovery period involved in facial reconstruction. As Sandhurst looks at the CCU, he comments about how great it is that in just a couple hours, the man who caused the 3 comrades so much pain and misery will finally have his legacy burned to the ground. Zeke walks away in silence, refusing to react to Sandhurst's statement. As Shang-Chi asks Sandhurst how Stark ruined Zeke's life, Sandhurst tells Shang-Chi that he will find out all he needs to know when the Day of Destiny arrives. But for now, he can take solace in knowing that Zeke has suffered much longer than both he and Shang-Chi have. The next day, we watch as Riri walks through the dormitory hallways in order to confront Zeke. As she walks, we see a poster hanging on the walls noting a ceremony being held the next day to honor the donation made by Stark Industries. When Riri arrives at the dorm room, she is greeted by a very eager Ferris who wants Riri to look at his schematics he grew up for his suit. Riri pushes past Ferris and confronts Zeke, who is seen working on his computer. As Riri confronts Zeke, we start noticing interesting objects placed around the side of his room. We see blueprints showing the design of a suit, a framed Forbes magazine with Tony Stark and Obadiah Stane on the cover, and finally, his computer background being a picture of a young Zeke with his father, Obadiah Stane. As Riri begins putting the pieces together, Zeke stands up and tells Riri to go away, as he has prepared for the big ceremony tomorrow. Ferris immediately jumps in and asks if Riri is excited for the big ceremony, as a lot of big-time donors will be in attendance to celebrate the generous donation. Ignoring Ferris, Riri exits the room and begins sprinting down the hallway, calling Rhodey and telling him to meet her at her laboratory. At the laboratory, Riri reveals her theory that Zeke and his associates would attack the ceremony tomorrow and would use the CCU to cause the Iron Legion to attack the guests, tarnishing the legacy of Tony Stark forever, which prompts Pepper to contact Dean Morley in an attempt to shut down the event. As Pepper talks with Morley, Rhodey observes Riri's lab and begins giving Riri pointers on her long-term dream project, the creation of her own Iron Man suit. While Rhodey is impressed with Riri and Xavier's intuition, he tells Riri that she won't be able to build a viable suit of armor with the materials she has, but does provide her with some ideas that she could use to expand on in the future. Pepper then re-enters the laboratory and informs the group that Irwin has refused to reschedule the event, claiming that too many high-profile donors will be in attendance, meaning that Rhodey and Pepper will have to figure out how to protect those in attendance at the event tomorrow. Riri offers to help, but Rhodey tells her that this is going to be far too dangerous and forbids her from going to help. Pepper thanks Riri and promises that after the entire fiasco is cleared up, she will find a way to repay Riri for her help. As Rhodes and Pepper leave, Xavier asks Riri if she is really going to listen to Rhodey, prompting Riri to wink as she tells Xavier to break out some blueprints as the two get to work. The next morning, we see an outdoor venue filled with wealthy donors who eagerly await the ceremony to begin. Backstage, Pepper once again attempts to plead with Morley to call off the event, but he refuses, citing the potential payday MIT would receive thanks to Stark's donation. Pepper then radios Rhodey, who has donned his War Machine armor, to be prepared for any possible scenario. Pepper then mentions that it feels weird not having Happy here to help out, prompting Rhodey to remind her that Happy's memory will be remembered, but for now they should focus on stopping the people behind his death. As the duo predicted, Dean Morley is cut off shortly after the ceremony begins, with the Controller taking over the ceremony. The Controller bashes Stark's legacy, saying that Stark was a man who pretended to care about people for the sake of making as much profit as possible, and that the ceremony today was a perfect representation of Stark's legacy. Technology being used for profit, and not truly used to help others. We then watch the Controller uses the CCU to activate the Iron Legion and commands the bots to attack those in attendance. This prompts War Machine to leap into action, and we also see Pepper suit up into a rescue armor using the nanobot technology Tony used during Infinity War. As Morley helps escort patrons out of the venue, Pepper and Rhodey's efforts are thwarted by both Shang-Chi and Zeke Stane, who dons robotic armor of his own that he built alongside the Controller. As the duo are overwhelmed by the onslaught of combatants, Rhodey attempts to shoot the CCU out of the hand of the Controller, who laughs at Rhodey, telling him that he is no better than Stark, and despite his best efforts, Stark's legacy will be one of bloodshed and death, not one of heroism and selflessness. As the Controller laughs hysterically, we see the CCU explode in his hand, causing the Iron Legion to fall to the ground. As the Controller looks around, he turns to see Riri and Xavier standing just to the side of the venue, with Riri wielding an upgraded repulsor, one capable of shooting an energy blast that destroyed the CCU. The Controller turns his sights to Riri and Xavier and races towards them. Riri and Xavier freak out, as the repulsor only had enough energy for a single energy blast. As they attempt to evade the Controller, Riri tells Xavier to find an armored Legion drone and use a hard drive on its logic sensor. Xavier breaks away from Riri as we see War Machine and Rescue have an easier time dealing with Shang-Chi and Zeke. While Zeke's suit is not capable of keeping up with the technological advancements of the other suits of armor, the power boost given to Shang-Chi by the 10 rings is too much for the combined efforts of Rhodey and Pepper. Riri is in a precarious situation as well, as the Controller's magnetic exoskeleton gives him increased strength and durability, as we see him trucking through trees and other obstacles in pursuit of Riri. When things begin to look bleak, we cut to see Xavier loading something into a dormant Iron Legion drone, causing it to reactivate with a blue light shining from its eyes. As it flies into the air, we watch the other Iron Legion drones slowly reactivate and take flight. As it turns out, Xavier loaded his own personal AI, nicknamed Not Tony, into the Iron Legion. The AI allowed a single drone to become the group leader, giving Xavier complete control of the entire Armored Legion fleet. Using this technology, Xavier commands the Legion to attack Shang-Chi, Zeke, and the Controller. While the Legion does not have the same power as the combatants, the sheer number of drones quickly overwhelms the villains. Thanks to the help of Riri and Xavier, the Controller and his men are defeated, and the legacy of Tony Stark is not tarnished in the eyes of the public. In the aftermath of the battle, we watch the FBI arrest Shang-Chi, Zeke, and the Controller, seizing their weapons in the process. We watch new FBI Director Harold Driver, played by Adil Zadid, talk with Rhodey about where the 10 Rings of Power will be stored. Despite Rhodey's concerns about the 10 rings managing to end up in the hands of the public, Driver assures him that the rings will be secure with the FBI. We then cut to see Dean Morley profusely apologizing to Riri for his rash action in deciding to expel her, and asks if she would be willing to give MIT a second chance. Riri declines the offer, saying that she would like to find something more academically stimulating than sitting through lectures covering concepts she already understands. As Morley walks away, Pepper and Rhodey thank both Riri and Xavier for their help, with Rhodey encouraging them both to keep working on their inventions, as one day the world would need a new Tony Stark. Pepper hugs the duo and tells them that she is planning to retire, but if they ever need anything from her or Rhodey, all they have to do is reach out. The final scene of the project cuts to that night as Riri and Xavier re-enter their lab, but they discover that while they were away, the latest and greatest technology was installed into the laboratory. With the duo realizing that this was Pepper and Rhodey's way of thanking them for their help, Riri begins planning on a way to finish her Iron Legion suit and step up to become a hero like Iron Man. In the first post-credit scene, we see Riri and Xavier working on an Iron Man suit a few weeks following the events of the project. Their work is suddenly interrupted by a mysterious voice, who is revealed to be Kate Bishop, played by Haley Steinfeld. Kate reveals that she heard all about Riri on the news and wanted to pay her a visit, as she has an opportunity that she would like to discuss with both Riri and Xavier. In the second post-credit scene, we see Shang-Chi sitting in a prison cell on the raft, as we watch Vice President Carter approach his cell and commend him for his impressive showing. When Shang-Chi asks Carter why she is there, she merely laughs and says that he should be thanking her, saying that he should recognize the person responsible for relinquishing government control of the Ten Rings. As Shang-Chi sits in silence, Carter walks away, but says she will be in touch once again when the time is right. And that is Armor Wars. Again, this is sort of a preview of how these videos are going to look moving forward. They're all going to probably be around 20 minutes in length. Some will probably be longer, but I'm going to guess that most will be around 20 minutes. And again, it's going to hit all the high points. So basically, just like the stuff we saw in the first and second part of Phase 7, but just a little bit different here and there with more detail and only one project per episode. With that being said, again, Hercules next week, but until then, like, comment, subscribe, join the Discord, share this video with a friend, but most importantly, have an amazing Saturday. Thank you for all the support, and I will see you all again next week. Take care.